Well, hello. We are so happy to have you here. I have first of all, I'm Emily Daniels. I'm the director of the Fort Collins Autism Resource Fair. This is our fifth year, and we are super grateful to the Museum of Discovery for giving us such a fun space to celebrate our families and our friends and each other, and just to get community people together to see who's out there. So thank you for being here today. I have four wonderful people with me today who are going to introduce themselves in a moment. They're so excited and they love attention. So you know how parents are. They're going to tell you a little bit about their experiences today raising someone on the autism spectrum. Obviously, every person on the spectrum is different, and every parent is different, and every experience is different. So I also have a child on the autism spectrum who is turning 16 this week. And he was a child who didn't talk until he was 4.5 and has not stopped talking since, which we love and enjoy very much. But I have to say that one of the resources that was really helpful for me in raising him was talking to other parents, because they're really living this experience. They're going to different providers and telling you who worked for them and who didn't work for them, what things worked for them in terms of raising their families or taking care of themselves. So this is a really great opportunity to hear from four in our community who have wonderful children and a lot to share. So, if you will, I feel like I'm on the dating game here. It's very, very exciting. We're going to go down the line. They're going to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about your child who has autism.
My name is Katie, and my oldest daughter, Nora, is 6. She'll be 7 this week, so she has a birthday this week too. And she's autistic, and yeah, there's a lot to say about her, but that's that's a good start.
My name is Summer, and I have four girls ranging from age 14 to 20. My 17-year-old daughter is the one who's autistic, and she just graduated high school a year and a half early, which we were really excited about. Not that she liked school, but we kind of pushed her through as quickly as we possibly could to get her out. Right now, she's working with the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, and she's doing a job study for dog grooming. That's been fantastic. So it's good.
Hi, my name's Chris, and I have one kid named Raven. She's right here. She doesn't want me to point at her, and she's 13. Um, well, you'll be 13 in May. Close enough. Yeah, I think that's all.
My name is Laura, and I have a 19-year-old, almost 20-year-old son with autism, and he's currently at CSU.
All right, hang on to that. We're coming back at you. Our first question for our panel here is how did you learn that your child had autism?
So my son didn't talk till he was almost 5. He was echolalic for all 5 of those years. And it's interesting because that was a long time ago. And so they told us because he made good eye contact, because he was loving with us, that he did not have autism. So it took a while to get the diagnosis. He was finally diagnosed at 4 here in Colorado. And it was a relief, actually.
I think our reason for getting Raven tested was more sensory issues that she was having when she was younger, and I think her assessment was when she was in first or second grade that we started that. She's trying to tell me the answer. Do you want to come sit up here too? She was 7, and a few years before she was born, I was diagnosed with autism as well, and so we have some things in common and some things not in common, and we try really hard not to project that my kind of the things I deal with are not the same things that she deals with or they deal with, but that gave us some things that we were curious if she might be on the spectrum.
Okay. This was probably the hardest question, Emily. put on the list for me. We kind of started noticing something when she was about 2, that maybe something was off. Talked to the pediatrician, no problems, you're fine. And then she went to preschool, and the preschool teacher recommended that we go get evaluated through the school district. So she ended up being put on an IEP for speech and going to Head Start. And then still didn't have a diagnosis. It was just sensory and speech. And then public school until about 2nd grade, when behaviors started getting kind of out of control at school. And we had numerous evaluations done, and they all came back saying that yes, there's something going on. We don't know what's going on. No one was willing to say, your daughter's autistic, but she has severe behavioral issues, severe sensory, severe speech, and it kind of described somebody on the spectrum without them saying she was on the spectrum. And when her behavior got really bad, she needed to get on some medication. So we went to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is the one who actually gave her the diagnosis without even doing the testing, just reviewed all of the past testing and was like, I don't know why they weren't saying you're autistic. And then Emily actually officially diagnosed her more like via testing this last summer. So it was kind of an interesting journey for us.
So with Nora, there were signs from the very beginning, from her infancy, I would say. And now when I think back, there's a lot of signs. But she had a speech delay, but she was also singing a lot and saying a lot of words, but she was echolalic as well. And so it wasn't necessarily functional communication. But it was really when our youngest daughter, who's 3.5, was born, who was completely different. Chatty Cathy from the beginning, long stares into my eyes, a very cuddly baby. She was so different than Nora that we took her into the pediatrician, and the pediatrician spent 2 or 3 minutes with Nora and said, yeah, she's autistic. So all of our assumptions. And the pediatrician turned out to have 3 daughters whose middle daughter was autistic. So it's because of that experience. It wasn't just because she was, it's not necessarily at all that all pediatricians have that kind of experience. It's because she was so similar to Nora. So yeah, I would say it was kind of having another kid that was neurotypical that just seemed so different that now when I look back, I'm like, oh wow, there are so many signs. So, but she was diagnosed around 3.5. So, yeah.
And I should just say that sometimes girls and women get overlooked because they have a lot of strengths that don't look like our original concept of what we thought autism was. So, if you have suspicions about one of your family members or a friend, give that some thought, because it can be very helpful for families and for individuals to get those supports. Well done, y'all. All right, the next question is a big one, which I thought was harder. Summer did not. What are 2 things you learned that you wish someone had told you when you started this journey? And you can just give me one if you really want to.
Okay, I think I'll just give one. I think that there is at least a lot of the messaging that we received around the time of her diagnosis was she's 3.5. There's kind of this urgency to do all the things. There absolutely isn't. And that's something we've definitely learned. The thing that I would say is prioritize your child's well-being and their mental health and their sense of safety and your family's sense of safety, because that's the number one thing. So.
Yeah, that was kind of one of mine too, is like, I think a lot of people first get, when their children first get diagnosed, they're almost handed a packet from whoever's diagnosing them and saying, hey, you need to do all these interventions and you need to do it right away. And my advice would be just to slow down and really do your research on what would work best for your family, who's working with the providers that are out there, and talk to them before you sign up to work with them. And then my other piece of advice was just like slow down in your family. Just take breaks. And even if you're going, like even today, if your kid gets really overstimulated, just go pull them off to the side and take 10 minutes and not rush. I feel like our society is so go, go, go. Sometimes it's hard for those kiddos to keep up with it.
I think the one thing that stands out to me that I wish I'd known more about was helping Raven like advocate for herself, and that was even a like concept of something you could do. Because when I was a kid, I don't remember that being something that we were taught how to advocate for ourselves with teachers, or explain to teachers what we needed in the classroom. And her having that ability has been important as she's gotten older.
I think for me, having lived, because we're in a different phase now with an almost 20-year-old, we went through those phases where 4 days a week we were in different therapies every single night, and it was exhausting. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't do this forever. And it does pass at some point when you're in that season. I wish someone had just said it will get easier. It's not completely easy, but it's different. And I feel like we're in a different phase and a different place with my son. And when I look back at early elementary school, middle school, high school, the amount of growth that we've seen has been really small, and you don't always see it day to day. But when you look back over 16 years, or however, that's how long it's been since my son was diagnosed, the growth is tremendous. And so I wish someone had given me that like hope, you know.
I think those are all excellent pieces of advice, and also should say that when we look at the research on what is the important factor of good outcomes for our kids, it's having supportive, positive parents who accept their children and build on their strengths. And I think these 4 parents definitely represent that. And I appreciate that about you both 4 times 2. All right. So in the term, thinking about therapy or interventions, what have been ones that you feel are really helpful? Or perhaps, if you want to, ones that are like, no, thank you.
Should I start? Okay, well, I'm not going to go on the no thank you route. But for my son, of course, they're all important. Speech and occupational therapy are really important. As he got older, and I've talked to a few of you in this room, I think executive function therapy has actually had the greatest impact on my son and his ability to cope, not just in school, but now he has a job and in life and in different relationships. So I would say that was something that we couldn't live without.
Where did you get executive function therapy?
Well, this is a huge plug, but I work at the Children's Speech and Reading Center, and I have for 13 years. And my son's actually worked with the same specialist for actually probably at 11 or 12 years at this point. Just as he evolves and gets into college and different things, we work on harder skills. But Children's Speech and Reading Center has great programs.
Is it a speech language pathologist?
It actually, no, she's a reading specialist. She's a former educator. She has a lot of the different training in executive function, Orton Gillingham, and different things. And it's just her passion. She can connect with those middle and high school students and build connections and relationships so they work hard. So,
And I've heard of speech language pathologists doing this. Also, occupational therapists can provide executive functioning support.
Raven did speech therapy for a couple years, and that was very helpful. And then the therapy that they do with Emily has been helpful. And then I guess the other one is we were lucky enough to do occupational therapy, equine therapy thing out at the Temple Grandin Equine Center. I think that's what that's called. And that's turned into a ongoing thing with horses that is helpful for Raven.
And sometimes they do studies that are free for families. So check out the Temple Grandin Equine Center online and see if there are any available for your family, because they can teach emotional regulation skills as well as just overall anxiety reduction and well-being and horse fun. So.
Yeah, my daughter also did equine therapy through Hearts and Horses for I don't know, it was probably 6 or 7 years till they were like, we don't know what else to do with her because she's getting really good at horseback riding. So we tried switching to someplace else and it was a disaster. Um, so I'd love to go back. Occupational therapy was probably the biggest one. And then as a teenager, just working with a therapist so that she can have somebody to talk to.
Speech therapy, for sure, for Nora. And also outdoor school. Nora's been in outdoor school the last 2 years, and there's something about being outside for her. She has a lot of hearing sensitivities, and so she is just a completely different kid inside in terms of her anxiety and her calmness and her sense of being more social and just so much more relaxed. So any sort of outdoor moving around activity, hikes, whatever, yeah, that's been big for her.
Thank you. And again for you, you and people, you lucky. What do you think the parts of parenting that are more challenging are, or what have been some challenges in parenting for you?
There's been a lot of challenges. Right now, I feel like we're kind of at a really good point right now. There's not a lot of challenges. Maybe we're all just letting everybody be. But I would say the challenges are still communication, just because I think she's probably always going to communicate just a little differently than I am. I'm kind of somebody that wants to ask her a lot of questions when she gets home from school and wants to know all the details, and she is a quieter, much more internal, introverted person, and so I'm getting used to that. But that's still a challenge for me. I think, what's another challenge? Just probably like anxiety issues that she has, and kind of regulating when she gets thrown off, and kind of try to help her through that and let her know that everything will be okay, and building her resilience. So kind of supporting her through that stuff.
Ours, when she was younger, was definitely behavior based. I feel like we kind of have that figured out now. Now, I don't know, one of the things like overall is for me that's really challenging is I feel like we'll be in a really good spot and everything's working really good and there's no issues and medication is great, and then all of a sudden something will happen and it's like crisis mode. We just had one this week. And it's just like I don't know, I feel like the rug is pulled out from underneath me and I have to restart, and just for me personally, like emotionally, just that cycle up and down has been really hard. Because like when we're in a good spot, I think, oh yay, we're there, and nothing bad is ever going to happen again, and we'll be at this spot forever. But it doesn't ever happen.
I think one of our biggest challenges, it might be a little unique for our family, but and my wife's not here because she's traveling this week, but having both Raven and me on the spectrum, and then her not being on the spectrum. And the interesting, like Raven and I will have a lot of things in common that cause us anxiety that are sometimes difficult to explain to my wife or for her to understand. And so that kind of balance between the family can be challenging at times to work through.
I think for us, high school was pretty good actually for my son, and so we thought college would be smooth sailing. And what we're finding is that for him, the social component is just going to be a struggle. I think probably for the rest of his life in different ways, and it's something that I can't fix anymore. Where when he was in school, I could talk to teachers, I could become more involved. I knew parents, I knew kids. He's at CSU now. I don't know any of the 30,000 people there, and it's been really hard to kind of encourage him to step out into this space and make his own friends. And so I think that's kind of our challenge right now, and we're just kind of trying to work through it and also empower him to know that this is on him at this point. Some of these things, I can't go to school with him, and so I don't know. It's a little bit of a struggle right now, but I think we'll get there.
And thinking about your child's strengths, is that my mic? Am I doing that? Is that me? You can let me know. I'm sorry. Okay. Um, strengths in your child. What are some things that you really appreciate about your child?
Oh, all of the things. He's hardworking, honest, so preciously sweet. I mean, he's just a good kid. And he's actually really funny. So I love that about him.
I would say a lot of creative things that Raven's into, and she has some really cool music abilities. Like I'm not musical in any way, and can never remember lyrics to a song, and Raven can hear a song one time and then know the lyrics, and there's a lot of that transfers to other creative things that they do, like writing and theater and that kind of stuff.
For my daughter, she's really smart, like exceptionally smart, and I think a lot of people underestimate her. She's actually at high school. You know, she talks a little bit differently, but she would raise her hand and answer a question, and kids would call her retarded, and that was last year. And she, you know, she kind of had to just let it roll off, and it's tough. And then I've kind of discovering that she's an empath, which is, you don't hear that a lot for people on the spectrum, but she can feel feelings and like animal feelings, like nobody's business. But it's also hard because she feels too much and she doesn't know what to do with those feelings. So that's kind of something we're working through right now.
Nora has something in common with Raven. She's very musically inclined and sings and can hear a song and repeat it back, and it's beautiful. And I can't sing at all, so it's very impressive. She's also really fair and kind and honest and athletic and silly. So, yeah.
All right, we have time for one more question. This is the hardest one of all, is where do you get support as a parent?
I get support from Emily. My husband is wonderful and incredibly supportive. Our families are very supportive. They don't fully understand kind of the home situation all the time, but they just help us as much as they can whenever they can. The organization Parent to Parent has been really supportive for me. I've been a support parent with them for about 2 years, and I love that community, so I get a lot of support there. My Nora's best friend is also autistic in her first grade class, and his mom and I are very good friends, and her name is Emily as well. So the Emilys are a big deal for me.
That's funny. I think just in the past, the therapists that we've worked with over the years have been probably the most support. Family and friends, I think they try to be supportive, but just don't understand. And yeah, some suggestions, even when she was little, like behavioral suggestions that just were not helpful at all, and just trying to get through that.
I think all the professionals we work with have been huge, and I think we've worked with almost everyone in Emily's office, from Mallory to Dr. Bedard and others that are there. So that's been very helpful. And then Raven's made some really good friends, a lot of them from outside of school. Like they did Taekwondo for a little while, and we have a family there. So those families that we have close connections with that are very accepting and inclusive have been key for us.
Same family, friends, therapists. That they're really our biggest supports. But I also just last year, and I encourage people to do this sooner. But just last year, I started doing things for myself that didn't involve my husband or my son. I started taking dance, and I just encourage people to take care of their own needs, and not just because I lived, only my child. That was the only thing that mattered, and that is the only thing that mattered. But it's also important to just look out for yourself and do something that brings you joy.
You guys are amazing.
It's me.
Well, thank you to our panel today. I really appreciate your insights. And we do have some parent support groups that are both online, and they're free. And Foothills Gateway does some parent support groups that are also free. Look to each other if you're a parent in this room, because they know what they're talking about. So thank you very much for being here, and we will see you again.